Wedge-shaped, mid-engined, and Italian are generally the words that you would use to describe any 1980s Ferrari or Lamborghini. But this time around, we aren't talking about the brands only reserved for the richest of the rich. We're talking about a Fiat. While their lineup of cars today may look rather bland, back in the 70s, they made some of the prettiest, most pure driving vehicles out there. And the piece de resistance of their lineup, so to speak, was the X1, a mid-engine sports coupe that offered the Italian sports car experience without making you sell a kidney to afford one. And of all people, it was us V8 hungry, muscle-bound Americans that loved it the most. This is the story of the poor man's Ferrari that could. Now, the X19's entire history can be traced back to boats, as a matter of fact. The initial design was penned by Marcello Gandini, who was the chief designer at Bertone in the late 1960s. Now, you may have seen many vintage Italian roadsters with the word Barchetta following their model name, and it had become known as a designation for a two-seat Italian roadster. But the word actually meant little boat, not roadster. Gandini took this rather literally and tried to translate the lines from period speedboats like Chris Craft's that kept the open top yet flat design, now just repurposed for an automobile. And in 1969, they unveiled this concept design, which was the Autobianchi A112 runaround concept car. This handsome wedge looked like a cross between a boat and a moon rover with its large styling bar in which the headlights were mounted to, but nonetheless, it captivated all those who saw it. Autobianchi at this time was recently acquired by Fiat as a new brand under that larger corporate umbrella. Fiat launched two new cars under the Autobianchi brand at this time, the A111 and the A112, which were commuter cars rather than sports cars like the Runabout. The Runabout was never going to be a commercially viable vehicle, and it was destined to fade into the category of concepts that we wish we had gotten. But the top brass at Fiat liked the design, and they were desperately in need of a replacement for the about-to-be-killed-off Fiat 850 Spider, which was an aging platform.
And speaking of aging platforms, if your old office chair is doing a number on your back and creaking around like this one is, then you need to make a change. And that's where today's sponsor FlexiSpot and their new C7 ergonomic chair come in. Now with the old chair gone, we got the FlexiSpot C7 right here, and let me tell you a little bit about it. I spend a lot of time at my desk, so the fact that this chair locks up at 93 degrees to keep my posture good while I'm working is super beneficial for me. Not to mention the actual fabric and material on the chair is super comfortable, durable, and it's surprisingly breathable. See, it conforms to your body and the pressure you put on it to give you as much support as possible. You can see it actually moves around quite a bit. I wish the seats in my Mustang felt this good. And when you're done with work after a long day, what's amazing about this chair, unlike other ones, is that you can simply unlock the backrest and recline all the way back like this. Plus, if you look here, you'll see the armrests as well are actually adjustable to pretty much whatever angle and way I want to adjust them to be comfortable at any time. You can actually adjust the headrest here in terms of how it pivots and its height, and you could even adjust the height of the entire backrest of the chair just by pulling up here and get it to a different level. It's also capable of supporting up to 300 pounds. This chair is warranted for 10 whole years. And right now, by using my code C750 at checkout, you could save $50 off your FlexiSpot C7 chair order. That's $50 off by clicking the link in the description and just using that code. But now, thank you to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video, and now back to the topic at hand.
So the call was made to take the rough idea of the A112 Runabout and turn it into a production-ready sports car. With Bertone and Gandini still at the wheel when it came to the design, Fiat was in good hands. And by 1972, the world caught a first glimpse of the next generation of Fiat sports cars, the X19. After months of anticipation and fine-tuning, Fiat officially launched the X19 to the world, and journalists and enthusiasts alike got their taste of the car on the winding Sicilian roads of the Targa Florio, where nimble handling was worth more than brute horsepower, and that was exactly what the X19's game was. The initial reception to the car was enthusiastic. European press loved the car's futuristic wedge design, its Miura-adjacent mid-engine rear-wheel drive layout, and its affordability. Fiat had effectively democratized the high-end Italian sports car dream, wrapping exotic proportions and handling into a tidy package that even middle-class buyers could access. In the United States, this proved to be the X19's greatest market. The car got stateside in 1974, and it slipped into a niche unoccupied by pretty much anything else, the affordable mid-engine sports car. The only remotely similar machine on sale was the Porsche 914, and even that German upstart carried a much higher price tag. American buyers, like myself, were famously enamored with V8s and muscle cars, might have seemed like an unlikely audience for the X19, but the car's compact charisma, combined with skyrocketing fuel prices after the '73 oil crisis, made it surprisingly appealing. Reviewers called it the poor man's Ferrari, a car that looked, sounded, and drove like something far more expensive than it was. Car and Driver's enthusiastic early reviews praised it as the only game in town for those wanting European flair and sharp handling without breaking the bank. Styling-wise, the X19 managed to stay remarkably similar looking to that initial concept it was based on. It was flat, simple, yet well proportioned, and it even managed to retain a toned-down version of that styling bar, which was where the Targa top clipped into. Beneath that skin, though, the X19 was much more than just a pretty face. Its body was built from stamped steel panels, forming a rigid monocoque chassis, sturdy enough that Fiat confidently met looming US crash standards without major redesigns. With the fun fact being, it was only this car and a Volvo who were able to pass said crash tests, which is pretty impressive for something so tiny. Now, the suspension setup was fully independent at all four corners, using McPherson struts both front and rear, delivering sharp, balanced handling that let drivers exploit every bit of grip. Braking came courtesy of solid disc brakes at all four corners, which was an advanced feature for a car in its price range. Its 85-inch wheelbase made the car tossable, while its 46-inch overall height kept the car as low-slung as you could really get in a street car. The X19 tipped the scales at a remarkably light 1,940 pounds, or 880 kilograms, which meant it was ready to dance at any corner you threw at it. You could exit those corners with your foot hitting the accelerator to the floor, because, well, the Fiat X19 didn't really have enough horsepower to startle you. In fact, for all the things that this car did right, it probably could have used another 50 horsepower or so. Powering the X19 was Fiat's venerable single overhead cam inline-4 that was originally designed by Aurelio Lampredi, who was a former Ferrari engineer who knew a thing or two about crafting power plants that liked to sing. Early European models both launched with the 1290cc or 1.3-liter version of this inline-4, lifted from the Fiat 128, producing 74 horsepower at 6,000 RPM and 72 foot-pounds of torque at 3,400 RPM. It featured an aluminum head, a cast aluminum oil sump, and it breathed through a twin-choke Weber carb. It gave the lightweight coupe plenty of character, but just not a whole lot of speed. The US models, thanks to our stringent and stupid regulations, at the time were choked out to just 63 horsepower out of the 1.3-liter inline-4. In 1979, Fiat upgraded both markets to a 1498cc or 1.5-liter single overhead cam inline-4, borrowed from the Fiat Strada. While the basic engine design remained the same, the stroke increased, boosting torque and making the car far more flexible in everyday driving. US carbureted versions with the 1.5-liter produced 67 horsepower now, but by 1980 to 1981, the US cars began transitioning to a Bosch L Jetronic fuel injection system, which helped restore power closer to 75 horsepower despite the continued emissions equipment load. European X19s, meanwhile, generally retained carburetors longer and were able to squeeze out a bit more power, up to 85 to even 90 horsepower in some markets, which gave them a slight edge in performance. These engines were all paired to manual gearboxes, a 4-speed manual in early cars that was replaced by a slick-shifting 5-speed manual when the 1.5-liter motor arrived, improving both acceleration and relaxed highway cruising thanks to the added gear. Visually, the X19 evolved steadily over its nearly 2-decade run, though its basic Gandini pen-to-wedge silhouette stayed remarkably intact. Early models, especially the 1974 US cars, featured delicate, slim chrome split bumpers that wrapped cleanly around the nose and tail, giving the car a light, almost playful appearance and kept it as pure to the original design as possible. But by 1975, the US safety regulations demanded 5-mile-an-hour impact bumpers, and Fiat responded with heavier twin-bar, ladder-style units that added bulk to the front and rear, a change that, while necessary, muddied the lines of the original design. The biggest visual shift came in 1979, when Fiat restyled the X19 with an integrated single-bar bumper and soft valence panels, which blended the crash structures more smoothly into the bodywork. Alongside these changes came redesigned wheels, revised front grille, updated air dams, and a reshaped rear deck. As the years rolled on, the X19 continued to carve out its niche. But even cult favorites have to eventually face the realities of the market. By the time production ended in 1989, Fiat and Bertone had produced roughly 160,000 X19s worldwide, with about 2/3 of those, over 100,000 cars, landing in the United States. In the early years, you could scoop up an X19 for under $5,000 US, a bargain compared to its rivals like the 914 or even the Alfa Romeo Spider. But as years went on, inflation, regulatory costs, and continual updates pushed prices upward. By the mid-1980s, a Bertone-badged X19 was closing in on $15,000 to $20,000, putting it well above the price of the all-new, yet similar, Pontiac Fiero and Toyota MR2, were much newer, better engineered platforms. And you may have heard me mention the Bertone-badged X19s. Well, the shift from Fiat to Bertone as the lead producer happened after 1982, when Fiat exited the US market. Bertone, who had always built the X19's bodywork, took over complete production and badged the cars under its own name. While mechanically similar, these later Bertone X19s featured subtle improvements in rust-proofing, interior comfort, electrical updates, and other minor tweaks. But by the late 80s, the writing was clearly on the wall. This mid-engine sports car landscape had become even more crowded, and the once quirky Fiat had been outpaced by all the new designs. Rising production costs, limited performance upgrades, and shrinking sales finally brought the X19's production to a close in '89. Inspired by the lines of sleek Italian speedboats, Gandini's little wedge carried the spirit of that Barchetta ideal, not just in name, but in feel. Light, nimble, open to the sun, and ready to dart across the tarmac with the same energy as a boat skimming the water. It wasn't the fastest car, nor the most powerful, but it delivered something arguably rarer, the exotic mid-engine experience distilled into a package that ordinary drivers could afford in the beginning. And now, let me know in the comments down below if you have any personal Fiat X19 stories. I would love to hear them. But that about wraps it up for this video. Thank you all for watching another Rare Cars video. Please make sure to go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. It really helps me out. But otherwise, until next time, enthusiasts.